much it is of how much you're still missing to get to 100%. Does that make sense? So right now you're missing 33% to get to 100, right? At least in your stat window. So if you added a source of 10%, it would give you 10% of that 33%, which would be 3.3. And then that 3.3 gets added. So every newer source, even if it's the same percentage, is a little bit less efficient than the previous one. And so that means that every single source you have has to be like the biggest percentage possible, because the biggest percentage, so if you take the classic example of, like, let's say we have two lines of 10%, right? The first one gives you 3.3, that takes you to 70.3, and then the second one gives you 10% of the 29.7 that you need, so that one gives you 2.97, and then that gets you to 73, right? Let's say that you have one line of 20% instead, then you get 20% of the 33 that you need, which is 6.6, so you end up at 73.6. So it's more efficient, not only because it takes up fewer spots, right? Like, you'd rather have one line of 40%, because then it only occupies one line rather than two lines of 20%, but it's also just better efficiency-wise to get bigger chunks. So that's why when you unlock your Legion, like let's say you get 2k Legion and you get that extra grid, because it's set up in a diagonal, right? If you just get one extra, you only have access to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spots in IED, and dedicating six, let's say consistent grid spots to IED wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? It wouldn't really give you that much extra penetration. Whereas if you put those 6 instead in boss damage, that would be 6% boss damage, or in critical rate would be 6% critical rate, or in critical damage would be 3% critical damage. But again, the critical damage is only that efficient if your critical rate is at 100%. So once you get to 3k, then you'll have access, every level it's 1 extra, right? So it's 6 and then 7, then it's 13 together. 13 IED, that will be worth putting in. Then after that, you go to, to 20, and then to 20, no, you end up in 40, right? It's 6, 7, 21, and then 30, and then 40, yeah. So that's why, that's the huge value in Legion. If you, like, I can be on a character, right? So the difference from where your Legion is at now to where, I'm not going to say that you should go for 8k and that it's like easy or anything. Like, it's a lot of work. But you see the grid bonus of where I put the pieces for my character is 75 strength, 5 dex, 5 attack, 250 HP, 20% critical damage, 14% critical rate, 40 boss, 40 IED. That's just because of where the pieces are. And then my member bonus is all of this. And all of that, well, you won't have these two probably until we have another lab event. But all of this really, really adds up. And if you combine that with the link skills that you can have access to, although I guess I don't have all of them, but, if you combine all of that, that's when you get those things where I log into level 1 Ice Lightning and I hit like 8k crits on my basic attack, right? All of this together is so much. So you had one of those things that was really, really relevant for you, which was like your weapon upgrade, and that really showed you like, this is how much damage this character can do. But as you slowly over time work more on the links and the Legion, you will notice that combined with all of the work you're doing on your character itself really enforce, because right now your character is very specifically built for mobbing. But even getting your critical rate up to 100% will also disproportionately help you get your minimum damage will just go up a lot, because if everything's critical damage always applies, and then the amount of times that you just barely don't kill a monster because there were a few, there was like 3 or 4 non-crits in one hit, where that will just never happen anymore, because it will always be crits. So it'll be a combination. What are the bosses that you have killed? Because you did have that shield before. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, well, that's mainly because the IED starts, it starts lacking, yeah. With Pierre, you know about the like suicide trick at the end. If you have split, so you always have a hat, right? And then when he switches, then you get the other hat. So the trick is to get them both pretty low, which can be hard, of course, because you don't want to heal the other one. So you gotta like keep them split. But when you have them both really low, the best thing you could do is just get killed because exactly you wait for them to switch and then you rest, so you don't have a hat, and then you kill them both. Yeah. That's because it was kind of designed to be a party boss. So if you're soloing, you have to kind of like, jump around those mechanics a little bit. Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so I was thinking about that because in general, I think you want attack speed +1 on the Evan in your inner ability. Um, but if you're gonna rely on mana spiral for damage and then mainly basically do all of your other combos instead, if that increases your DPS, do you still want the attack speed +1 then? Because I thought the main reason you wanted it is for, I believe it was called Magic Dispatch, right? To have what what is your main like basic attack with? Is that mana burst? Yeah. Oh, mana dispatch is something else. Um, to have that one sped up, right? That's the main reason you want the attack speed +1. So if you're not going to rely on that skill anymore for bossing, but instead you're going to, because you don't want to use it during spiral, right? Okay, okay. Let me look at that. Oh, is it called Spiral of Mana? Oh. But you don't want to use it at all during spiral, right? Because then you drop lines or something. Yeah, I believe if you use regular, um, sorry, I forgot the name again. Mana burst. I think if you use mana burst during you have the spiral that you have up, you lose lines on the spiral. So that's why you want to focus on the combos. So that's probably why people are playing around with it. Like, can you still weave it in a little bit between the combos, or does that take too much DPS away? Do you want to use a worse damage combo instead, so you upkeep more DPS on the spiral? Something like that. It's probably what people are testing around. Because it would make sense a lot that now that you have to incorporate that, you probably have to redo your rotations as well on your battle analysis, right? And like, what is your 40-second burst going to look like? Because you definitely want to incorporate it, but yeah, how do you want to play around it to optimize your DPS? Um, for wait, wait, for eight what? Wait, 8 seconds of the skill? Mm-hmm. Well, when people talk about battle analysis and they talk about numbers, they usually mean about how many trillions of damage they do during the 40 seconds. So if they say 8, then it's probably someone doing 8 trill damage during 40 seconds, which is a lot. That's probably someone that's pretty high level with like a Ozring who's like kind of decked out, most likely. Yeah, well, I mean, I can kind of tell, right? Because with this, you did have like more ID before, but if you're this level and you haven't cleared CRA yet, then there is some kind of desynchronization between what the game is kind of expecting you to already be able to do and what your character is able, or what you personally are able to do with your character. So to circle back to that before, like if you wanted to boss, then I could already like I would have to do the numbers exactly, but like 75% ID on your secondary would be way better for your damage than 2 lines of magic attack, right? If you're going to be bossing, because of how low it is now, and because you know how high that damage reduction is. Um, like we do real quick numbers, but it's like 67%. CVAL is 200%, so you ignore 134. So there's 66% final damage reduction, not taking into account any like invisible bonuses. So there's also a difference between visual and functional IED. Visual is just what you could see in your stat window. A functional is always is well pretty much always a little bit different, because what the stat window shows you is that, hey, regardless of which attack you use and which target you hit, this is how much ID you're going to have. But there are things that you can do that go outside of your stat window. For example, you could hit a boss who's debuffed by, for example, right? The stat window doesn't know that at the moment that you're hitting something, but at the moment that you hit something, it does get calculated in. And what if that debuff that you have has 100% uptime? Then you actually have to calculate it in as if you have it, because otherwise you will be you won't be working with the exact numbers, right? Same thing for boost nodes, for example. Once you get to level 40 boost nodes, certain boost nodes, and certain hyper skills have this as well, passive hyper skills, where they can give you extra ID, but only to certain skills. So it won't show up in your stat window because, it only happens at those certain skills. But what if all of your certain skills, all of them have 20% ID? Well, then functionally, you actually have a 20% ID line that is not being accounted for by your stat window. So this is why once you get more into the bosses that have like 200, 250, 300% defense, you want to start calculating this in and basically kind of do your own calculations on the side so that you can make sure that the ID that you have is actually what you're aiming for. Because eventually what becomes very important is the balance between magic attack, IED, and boss damage in what we call the WSE, the weapon secondary emblem. These are the 3 items that can get those lines, and that's basically your trifecta of like stable damage when it comes to bossing. So there's a calculator for that, the ID calculator, where you can basically just put all of the sources that you have in, and it'll roll out the actual number of ID that you have, your functional number. And then whenever anything changes, you can go back to that and just alternate it. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have extra, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the spiral I think gives you flat magic attack, correct? Yeah. So when the WC is specifically talking about percentage magic attack, but that is true. I believe Evan gets I think 15% or something, quite a bit, right? In is it like first or second job, or even 20%? Yeah, they do get. But yeah, that does mean it upsets that balance. That's why the WSE has room to give like, hey, what is your standard magic attack? Because that is important for your overall balance, and that might mean if you have so the way that you see this is like a class that has innate IED will just focus more on attack, and if you are in a class one, I think the only one in the game that has more innate magic attack, well then you will aim for more IED, because it comes down to that balance, right? Like how much damage do you do and how much armor penetration do you have, so you can put that damage through. And if you have more damage, then you need to focus more on the penetration. If you already have more penetration, you need to focus more on the damage. It's all about that balance, because in the end we have to deal with the same bosses with the same amount of defense, with the same amount of HP. Um, yeah, sure. So what is your did you find the skill? No, the one that gives you percentage magic attack. Yeah, percent magic attack. Yeah, that's the one we want. Um, it might be either like a beginner skill that levels with you, or like first, second. Evan has like, how many jobs does Evan have? Do you have like extra ones? Oh, you have, okay. It's not like dual blade that has like 2.5 and 3.5 or something. Let's see. You have the damage of magic. Yeah, that's like final damage. Yeah, but only for your magic. So if you hit smack with your wand or with your staff, it wouldn't work. Are there any Evans in the chat who know? Yeah, right on. I will play it. 35. Okay. Evan here. Hey, Eller. Is it your base magic attack? Is that 35% because of your passives? Look, he's shook. He doesn't even know. I will check. Okay. Um. Okay. Let's put 35 here. So we want to have the most optimal, or we want to kind of know what is the optimal weapon secondary emblem distribution of percentage magic attack, percentage damage, and percentage IED, or percentage boss damage, right? On the emblem. So what we have to take is what are your stats without any of those potential lines, right? Otherwise, the numbers are going to be completely muffled up. So first thing you have to do is make sure that we don't count any of the magic attack that is on. So it can be on the weapon itself, right? It can be in the flame or the base stats of the weapon, but those will typically already be counted by the stat window. But we don't want to take any of these. So you don't have. So you do have 9% damage here, so we will have to subtract that one if you want to be optimal. Now, I will say, like before we get through this whole thing, is that what this calculates is what is the most optimal for you right now in this specific situation. But if you work on your Legion and your Links a lot, all of these numbers are going to change a lot, right? So what the eventual number is going to be, we could look at what your current situation is, and we could also look at like what is a realistic situation for you to end up in, and what will be your situation there, right? So we should probably do the latter. I think that'll be more realistic for you. So I think eventually you probably want to get magic attack 3% on your soul, right? So that will be an extra 3%. Again, that doesn't get accounted for in your potential, but it becomes like your base magic attack that you have. Now, your base percentage damage will go up by a bit when you level, not that much. The main thing this will go up by is by boss damage from your Legion. So we'll have to think is like, what is a realistic amount of Legion that you can get to? So the main thing with Legion is if you don't like Legion at all, or you don't like training a lot of characters that aren't your main character, the main thing to do is just to do a little bit of Legion every day. Not too much that it disrupts your balance, but just a little bit, and kind of force yourself to do a little bit because you are going to feel those results. Especially once you have this much gain to be made, you're definitely going to feel it. And then I think very quickly you can get to 3K to 4K because it just comes down to making a new character, grinding it out to 100, and then just stopping and then just doing Zakum. And then you just go to another character the next day. And then you just come back, log in, do Zakum, and log out again. And you'll be 140 in no time. That's usually how I do it, especially if it's a character I don't like. If you like it, you can just continue leveling it a little bit. But if you don't like it, just let it sit. Just Zakum it to 140 and do nothing more. Have you already Terrorburn 1 now? Okay. Okay. Um,
I was thinking Luminous just because I know with like how little IED I have, I feel like I should go for level 3 Luminous, but maybe not.
mhm. Um, okay. So the thing is like so I think the kind of farmer is like the wrong solution for the right problem, if that makes sense. So you can so you've realized that you have a problem, right? You need more damage on bosses because bosses are too hard right now. Mobbing is probably not really a problem. We can still probably make that quite a bit better. But your Evan should also be making a decent amount of money while training once you get your kill speed up, especially with the inner ability you have. And if we have some kind of drop rate and meso obtain going on your, yeah, then you can also make good rates with the Evan. So then it's not at least in the direct future necessary to go into a farming Kana. Um,
I see.
the value would be there could be value in the future for sure. So having one on, having one prepped, and having some baseline going with arcane symbols and with nodes and that kind of stuff is of course good. Um, but the solution to the problem right now is fixing critical rate IED. Those first and foremost, that will bring up your base damage when you're mobbing, so that you can more reliably one shot or two shot or whatever, and it will also make it so that bossing becomes way more enjoyable. You can make more money off of bossing as well by selling the crystals, and in general, you'll have an easier time really feeling like a 229, because right now you're like a 215 in the body of a level 229 kind of. And in some aspects you're already there, and in some other aspects you're like lagging far behind. So we have to reset that balance, I think, within your character first, before you can make a good decision on where you spend all your time and if you're going to go aside farming. Because what will happen is if you go really hard into farming now, all of your money is going to go into the Kana, and then your Kana is going to start bringing a lot of money back and a lot of nodes. The nodes are going to help to an extent, right? And then the droplets are going to come in, and it's like, well, do I need to start working on Arcane again already? And then there's going to be new changes coming up, and you'll have a lot of money. But the only way that money can help you get your money can't help you get critical rate first of all, and then it can help you get some IED. But then again, it would just mean that you have to re-roll your shield back to what it was before. So that's not really going to be what you want to do either, right? So we'll have to see like what is a realistic amount of Legion that you think you can get to, what amount of IED critical rate and whatever gains will that get you, and then based on that situation, what do you want to have on your WSE and on your other items moving on from there. I think that's the way to go. That makes sense. Um,
I think then like rather than doing the actual WSC thing for like whatever it might be or like whatever I might realistically get to, like more so how do you like I need to understand how you use it, I guess. So then like
mhm.
how does it calculate your for like if by adding in base percent magic attack, how does that like know how much magic attack you like technically already have? If that makes sense.
So it basically tries all of the combination that exists, and the outcome of any combination is an increase of a certain amount of final damage based on your base situation. And so it tries to optimize for the highest percentage final damage combination, and it tells you what those combinations are basically. So most of the time, it's going to be weapon attack on your, or it's going to be attack on your weapon usually, because you're going to have Abso or Arcane, and then the lines are 10% instead of 9%. So if you want to get attack anywhere, magic attack anywhere, it's mostly going to be on your weapon. The IED is typically going to be on your emblem, because the emblems cannot get boss damage, and then the boss damage is primarily going to be on your secondary because it can get boss damage. It doesn't need ID because the emblem already has it, and the attack lines are lower than the weapon. So that's typically, so if you need IED, it's going to focus on the emblem. If you need boss, it's going to focus on a secondary, and if you need attack, it's going to focus on the weapon. And then based on your exact balance is going to be maybe one extra line of IED, maybe one extra line of boss, and then as much attack as possible to fill it out. The main thing is that when you say like display top 100, the difference between like your most optimal solution, which would be But like your ID would be way lower here, right? So we're not going into the exact numbers, but the difference between like the top best result and the like I don't know, like the 50th result or something, is like the top one gives you 87.9 final damage compared to your base, and then the 50th one, which seems like a horrible one, right? Because it's way down there, but this one gives you 82.5. So it's like 6.5%. What is it? 5.5% final damage difference. But so there are a lot of combinations, right? But this take into account that you have 9 lines that are all good lines, right? They're all either IED, either magic attack, either boss. And getting to actually 9 usable lines on your WSE, that is already a super expensive thing. So you just want to, but as you can see, like 6 attack and 3 boss, that's like a difference of 0.9% final damage with someone who has 3 lines of boss, 3 lines of attack, 4 lines of boss, and 2 lines of IED, which seems like that's completely different, right? But the outcome is that it basically makes your damage pretty much the same on bosses. Now the difference, of course, between these is that this one is going to have way higher mobbing damage, right? Because it has the flat attack lines. This one is going to have lower mobbing damage. But as you get further into the game, it's mostly your arcane power and your boost nodes that are going to determine what your actual damage output becomes, because those give you final damage, and that's going to be way more important. So yeah, in general, so the IED, to calculate what your actual IED is, right, what we talked about, your visual IED, you have to fill this one in. So just take out the things that you don't have. You could take out the things you don't have yet, and then what comes out in this number, so the IED calculator, you can find it right here, or it's under exclamation mark IED as well. And then this number, that's the number that you put in here, right there, to have like an accurate representation. So. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you put like 67, and then did you? Yeah. It probably give you like really weird outcomes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you see the numbers now. Because if you put in 67 and it takes in 300% boss damage, right? You see the increase in final damage numbers here. Because it goes up by 12,000% because because you'd hit 1 damage now, right? So so it's like, hey, you get IED on everything, and then it's like, look really whack. Yeah, well, because you're at that cusp, right, and because it's is it logarithmic? Like it's like a hockey stick basically, because like 1 increase more in IED basically doubles your damage, or like triples your damage like very early on, but then that tapers off, of course. So wait, it would be like a logarithmic scale, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, but like you have over level 40 boost nodes, for example, right? So that already gives you 20%. So this visual IED just, that's why I think it's important that you know the difference between the visual and the functional, because after a while you have to kind of let your stat window completely go on certain parts, like the critical rate, anything that has 100% uptime on, then it's important to look at your stat window and to see like, okay, like your knowing how much final damage you have, I guess it's kind of important to know to what extent you're dependent on those buffs. Having a critical rate at 100% is important. Yeah, for everything else, there's like caveats, right? Like your arcane power can be different in certain areas. You could be temporarily boosted. But those requirements are good, but those you can also see in the map when you're in the map, so you don't really have to rely on a stat window for that. Knockback resistance can be an important thing, but again, like you could have passive skills or something that, yeah, you could have skills that just give you knockdown resistance, for example, and then knockback resistance is a completely unnecessary stat to look at. Your base boss damage could be 100%, but maybe in your burst you go up to 300, and that's when you're doing most of your damage, so that's also, yeah. So the stat wind and the range, is completely out of here. So, sorry, excuse me, because damage range takes into account like damage to normal monsters, but visually, even when you're attacking bosses. So that's already inaccurate because those numbers don't apply, and yeah. So at a certain point, you just have to start doing the maths and start using calculators yourself, because yeah, whatever's going on here is just outdated, basically. Yeah, so I would never just reset the hyperstats, but just you know because we want to, because it is like a big puzzle, right? You get stats from a lot of different sources. You get them from your Legion, from your links. It's to some extent from your Matrix, right? Things with decent sharp eyes, stuff like that, and from your hyperstats. And you want to make the puzzle together make sense, because every single point has a different value in all of the different aspects, but also depending on how far you go. For example, like critical rate, the first 5 levels just give you 1% and are very cheap. Then after that, it gives you 2% per level, which of course way more valuable, but also way more pricey. Whereas in your Legion, for example, one block is 1%, which is very valuable early on because stuff like ID isn't very valuable there. But then ID is more valuable in your hyperstats because of the big chunk, right? You can make a big chunk of level 10 hyperstat that counts as one source. It isn't like 10 individual 3% lines, for example. So that's why that's important there. That being said, the intellect, I'm pretty sure that if we take out the intellect and the magic attack, and we probably, yeah, and as a rule of thumb, you don't really want to go over level 10 hyperstats like for a long time because over 10 it gets super duper expensive. And it's just going to be way more efficient getting all the other relevant ones to level 10. So that's basically like crit rate, crit damage, ignore defense, damage, and boss damage, like those 5. Those are generally the one you focus on. The one exception can be going into arcane power. If that gives you more final damage on a higher level, so you can go to a higher area faster and kill faster for mobbing or for bossing, right? Let's say that you're at 520. Yeah, exactly. No, that's good because that's final damage, and again, that overpowers something or the necessity for IED and boss damage, of course, because the elite monsters are just going to die anyway, so you don't really need it for those. But yeah, I'm pretty sure. So 1, 2, 4, 8, 10, 15, 20, 25. 40, 50, I'm trying to do this in my head. 60, 75. I think that's 75 points. And you're at 30, 35. So these 20. Oh yeah, 65, 75, so it leaves 85. And 5 is at 1, 2, 4, 8, 10. So you can do 15, 20, 25, 30. 15 plus 20 plus 25 plus 30 is 50 plus 40 is 90, and that's 5 points short. Oh, but you have 19. I think you can get but critical rate. Oh yeah. No, because that would just be too big of a clunk of a number. But I think you can do 10 crit rate, 8 critical damage, 10 IED, 8 damage, 8 boss damage. I think you can do that. So like 10, 8, 10, 8, 8. Because, I mean, you need these numbers regardless, because it's not like you're already at 94 and we don't want to overgo. Like, you're at 60, so there's no real risk of like, oh no, we overshot it. Like, it's not really going to happen. 8. Again, like, we don't want to go over on crit damage if the critical rate isn't all there yet, right? Yeah. Yeah. But what do you think you need for IED? Yeah. Well, at this point, probably 15, but yeah, 10. Yeah. That's when I was in the test server. We didn't get IED on anything, so I went into some boss fights and I did 1 damage to everything. So I had to squeeze in a 15 IED in the hyperstat window during the boss fight so I could actually hit the things. Was a little bit scuffed, but
Okay, we got the 10 left. Then you said 8, right?
yeah, we can go level 8 on both. I mean, according to my calculation, I'll have 14 points left, but if you got some extra, you might have like 25 or something left.
I have 160 left. Oh, after the boss damage too?
Yeah, yeah, boss damage as well. Oh, so you have like 41 left? Okay, so you have 10 8 10 8 8 right now?
Yes.
Okay. Oh, maybe you had some points in arcane power. What's your arcane power right now?
Oh, it's at 600.
Oh, 600. Okay. Yeah, it's 0 in hyperstat. Yeah, okay. I was like 0. Wait, we did something very wrong. Did you unequip your symbols? Okay, 75 left. Okay, that's cool. That's cool. Wait, so it's 30 35.
I'm gonna bubble tomorrow, so I don't know how much additional hyperstat that is.
Yeah, I don't know either. That's like some number. It's out there somewhere. I guess best for you right now would just be to put the boss damage to 10, I guess. Because that would be 8% extra. That's already quite nice. 4% per level. That's why, so boss damage is 4% per level, damage is 3% per level, but, you know, damage only applies to, or damage applies to both, boss damage only applies to bosses. But, so the further, the higher you go, if you can already kill everything, then boss damage becomes, you know, equally expensive to upgrade in the hyperstats, but it's 1% more per level, so that's why it gets preferential treatment there.
So with Superior Golex Ring equipped, I have 73%
Yeah, I saw that you have that one, but you didn't have it equipped. Let me go through the things in your sheet real quick now, and then we're gonna circle back. So we already did that. So with honor experience, so the thing to know for sure is if that so that attack speed +1 is probably still relevant, right? Because of how low the uptime of the spiral is. So I wouldn't use any more honor experience to min-max your third line because it will be very expensive and you will most likely just waste your honor experience, basically. So I would just save it all up until the moment that you know that you're going to go for your like the real invulnerability that you're trying to stick with. And for you, that will most likely be once your farmer like comes online. So that's going to be like quite a lot later. But right then, you won't be as dependent on how much money your main makes. And then you can also roll out of that stuff. So you can min-max your damage when you're bossing on your Evan, rather than having to rely on the invulnerability for extra income. This is like something that will probably cost you like at least 2 million or something honor experience. So that's probably like the number you want to aim for before you really even consider like completely going overboard on the other side. And so until you get to that point, you're probably just going to still be leveling on your Evan the most, and you're going to be mainly making your money there. So you can slowly start working on the Kana, but it's not too, I would just wait until there's huge events like huge cube sales, stuff like that, and then make some investment in your Kana so you can make some gains. But other than that, it's not really necessary to start dumping early money in there.
Yeah, I just do dailies on that Kana.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's good to get your arcane power rolling already, so you don't get hugely stonewalled by hey, a new area. I do 1 damage to everything. Yeah, or I take major damage when they bump into me. So attack speed, boss, magic attack is what Evan wants eventually. So you know how to go about your well, no, you don't. Okay, so with honor experience, that one is really valuable, and it's pretty limited in sources. So that's why that's also an added value as to why I say like don't waste any more now, or don't use any more now, because it would be a waste. Because eventually, how you want to go about this is you'll just use circulators. Because when you roll circulators, you always get the highest number in the tier that it rolls, right? Whether it's epic, unique, or legendary. So you use circulators to either roll the 10% boss or the 21 magic attack on the second or the third line. Those will be unique lines, so the occurrence is rather low because on standard, the game wants to give you legendary top and then epic epic. So to get unique lines, especially to get 2, is already like a rare occurrence. So you want to roll it with circulator so that if you get it, you get the highest possible number in that tier as well. Yeah, so either 10% boss or on second or third, or 21 magic attack on second or third. I assume that those will be relatively similar outcomes. If you roll any one of those, you probably hit the magic attack first. It seems to be a bit more common, but who knows. Once you have that second or third line, then you wait until there's a 50% off event. So the best thing would be to just wait until there's a 50% off and then, have a bunch of money and then dump it into circulators to try to get one of these lines. So that on the same day you can reroll, so you don't have a day where you're like completely off. Although you won't miss a lot of damage because you don't have damage in the inner ability in the first place. So that's kind of like a hidden bonus. It's just your rates will go down. And then you will lock both your legendary tier and that one line that you rolled, be it the boss or the attack. And then you will try to go for that attack speed on the top line. Of course, you will also try to get something useful on the third line. But it's like the more lines you lock, the more expensive it is to roll. So you only want to do this during a 50% off, realistically. Otherwise, it gets super, super expensive, yeah. Yeah, and then if you get something lucky on the third, you lock that one as well until you get your attack speed. Or if you get your attack speed, then you do the same thing that you do now. You just lock the attack speed and the boss, and then you try to get anything useful on the third one whenever you do. For honor experience, are you doing dojo weekly? Dojo is basically kind of like people trying to flex their EP, I guess, like on how far they can get and how strong they are. But based on your rankings, you also get points, and with those points, you can buy items in the store. And among them are honor experience medals that you can buy, which gives you a decent income in honor experience. And if you rank very high, you can get some special gloves that can be very useful up to a certain point. And you can also get like an MVP tonic that you can share with everyone else. But that's for the people who are rank 1 in the class. And there's like a leaderboard, so people try to check like, okay, who are the other ones? But yeah, if you see some other Evans that are like way lower level than you and they end up higher, or way higher level than you and they end up lower or something, sometimes people reach out to other people in the dojo and are like, hey, like I saw that you gained like 2 ranks, 2 floors. Did you do something else? Did you change something? And maybe they can be like, oh, I got a ring or something. So this can also be a way to kind of look around and see like who are the other active Evans around my level or around my damage level, and what are they doing and how are they progressing. And then yeah, sometimes people use it like that. Yeah, but it's probably the same people that are also in Reboot Central, like talking about stuff. Those are probably also the most active people who do dojo and things like that. But yeah, so honor experience source, because you're gonna need a lot of it. You're gonna be stocking up for maybe a year or so, probably. But don't feel bad, because in that year you're gonna get a lot of mileage out of your current inner ability, so it's all definitely worth. Yep. Yes. Okay. Get magic attack. Yeah. Okay. Gonna look for. Yeah. ID and credit. Yeah. So like, huge main advice is to get into Links and Legion. Like that's where a lot of your possible gains lie now. Yeah. It feels weird, but I tell this to a lot of people who are new-ish to the game. I guess you're not super new, but at a certain point, you will get more stronger on your main playing other characters than you will playing your main. And it's kind of weird, but that's just how it's set up. Not only that though, it's also Links and Legion are basically the way that you fund other characters in your account. Since we don't have trade, you don't make equips, but yeah, you just, every new character will get stronger and stronger as your Legion starts growing. And it'll also, yeah, exactly. And it'll feel way less tedious to be like, oh, I have to do another character. Instead, it's like, oh, let's do 2 characters today, because they're so fast now. They're so easy. You get to switch your links over. Maybe you'll have a little bit more access to experience coupons. You definitely want to focus harder on events, right? When there's a Mega Burn, Terra Burn. If there's any character you play and you absolutely hate it, you just can't even get like past level 20 or something. It's just monstrous. You just drop it and you just put it on the list like, okay, whenever Mega Burn comes out, this is the one I'm going to Mega Burn, because fuck it. Like, don't put yourself through that evil and force yourself through that. Just try to find the ones that are at least a little bit enjoyable. Yeah, basically that. I think besides that, I think we can take a small gander at your matrix to see what it's like, but it looked pretty good.
Yeah, I've asked so many people questions about my matrix. And then like the thing is, maybe like he's uploading this because of like the processes need to flow to 250.
Mm-hmm.
So he posted his matrix and having like he basically maxed all of my abilities possible,
Mm-hmm.
which like I heard is very good because like a luxury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then like now that there are more fusions that you need to do because you're not really using mana burst because you want the mana spiral DPS, I
Yeah.
guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it now worth to then get a second set of primary trinets?
What I understand is that some of these skills and some of these fusions are situational. So it depends on not only like, well, it can be a certain boss, whether there's platforms, whether it's just a flat map, whether it's a stationary map moving, stationary boss moving. Imagine the map moving. Well, it happens in Will sometimes. Uh, whether it's a stationary boss, moving boss, and where you're mobbing at all, of course. So much so that some people just hate certain maps and hate how certain skills work. Maybe they're not as reliable. Like, I don't know, those little electricity balls that like float around. I don't know if you start using those at a certain point. Um, yeah, maybe people just don't like how that works because they like more reliable ways of damage, and it kind of just comes up to play style. There's definitely a few skills that everyone buffs because they're just too good and yet have too many uses for them. But when it comes past a certain point, I think it. If I remember from my V Matrix, I don't know if you've seen this one, but I asked for input from a lot of classes, and I remember for Evan that there was some input where I got some contradicting results, and then one person ultimately said like, well, these are the most important ones, but you will definitely see people do different builds because they just like using different skills more. So I have two Evan builds set up. I think that's one of the only characters that has it because you have so many skills that can all be relevant in a certain situation. Um,
Yeah, so like I have the most like common ones both as like my trinodes right now.
uh huh.
Like
So,
from what you're saying, like this is like okay. Like I have a lot of other things that like I can worry about.
uh huh.
So I do look for the skills that I'm missing in like my third trio. If I were to make one, I still have to come across. Like the only reason why my V Matrix is like as far as it is because of that weird event that we just had, like the dailies, the extra like symbols and tokens
Right, right, right. Yeah.
that
Unending night.
boosted my Matrix like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I got like massive gains for that stuff there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am like looking for that third set of trinets.
Did he do the? Yeah. Did he do three sets like Mana Burst, Earth Circle, Wind
He did
Circle,
three
Thunder?
sets, but then he also had a seventh one because I think he's boosting the Evan Summon, the Boost Onyx. Um, he put that one to 25 just that he could make sure to one shot it whatever map he was on. But he was saying like we definitely don't need it.
Yeah, because in Reboot that doesn't come into play, right? Because we don't have nearly as much scaling as on Reboot, so it never. I don't think it ever comes to that level of value
That makes sense.
because it's so weak. It's one of the weirdest hyper skills I've ever used on any character. I'm like, oh yes, giant dragon, and it doesn't do anything. It's so fucking weak. So yeah, I guess it comes into play if you're Secrix, if you're that high level, if you're decently upgrading your stuff. He probably has really strong training gear, I assume, that he invested in that he's just switching around.
Probably. He just
Um,
burns the base.
yeah, exactly. And then he probably just like maxes out nodes immediately that just power levels through. Does he transfer arcane symbols? He must do that, right?
I'm not sure, but like he talked about how he put like 700 nodes into like his Evan when he was starting it, and I was like, what the hell? I don't think I've ever opened 700.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. People just
That's
casually.
nuts, bro.
Yeah, if people start a new main on Reboot, they'll just casually throw like 3K nodes at it or something. Yeah, these are like some crazy numbers.
I had some like really specific gearing questions since like time is coming down.
Yeah. So the matrix all makes sense to you, like which ones are important and what the options are.
I think it's good.
I think as you talk to more Evans, people will also be like, oh, if you're training in this area, like these skills are really good and these you kind of don't use. And maybe you'll make extra nodes, but I don't think you will ever equip all of them, right? Because the value of skill nodes is so high. So yeah, you don't want to go too crazy on filling up on eight or so boost nodes because that leaves like no space for all of your good skills. Yeah. Yeah. So equip wise, one thing you'll have to do is make like a guesstimation on how much IED and critical rate you can get from everything. Well, critical rate not as important, right? Doesn't really appear on your stat, on your potential lines. But the IED and the boss damage coming in will have a huge impact, and the set bonus, of course. Once the superior set bonus comes in, that's going to be huge. How many pieces of that do you have right now?
Yeah, so I have four pendant and little earring.
Okay, cool.
But then because I didn't have any gear to transfer hammer them into, I don't really know why, but someone told me you should L pot everything and then Star Force. And then I got told, okay, well you should Star Force things to transfer hammer and then L pot because obviously it's an mission.
Mm-hmm. So both of
It's a
these,
weird spot
yeah, yeah, you get
for 12 stars.
yeah, well, you get completely conflicting advice. So the reason why people will say either one is because for some people it's just not really realistic to go for Star Force that's much higher than 17 and to also have great legendary potential. This is so basically what happens is if you play the game where you like progress really fast, maybe through carries, and then you make a farmer to min max everything, you end up with like 17 star everything because that's the highest you can safeguard, and then really good legendary potential, like 2 or 3 line everything basically, and that gets you really strong. Like you can be strong enough to do what those bosses you said, like hard Lotus, hard Damien, hard Lucid, hard Will. Like you can do those bosses with that if your potential is really really good, if your flames are on point, and if you have everything at least 17 star, you can probably be strong enough to do all those things. You're just gonna make sure your boost nodes, your legion is on point, like that kind of stuff, right? All of the peripherals, because it is seen as like that's kind of like where a lot of people kind of like block, and that's kind of like the end of late game basically. If you ever want to go into end game, basically doing that is well, that's what kind of what the other person said. If you go too hard in your potential, you're going to miss out on a lot of potential gains for going for Star Force above 17. And if you look at the gains that you can make off of Star Forcing past 17, um, so to like say the difference, I think for going from 17 to 19 stars is probably already better than going from 2 lines of potential to 3 lines of potential.
Yeah,
So if you look at
and
it,
Star Force is like the biggest like thing that affects your damage, I guess.
yeah, and it's right now the events for Star Force are also way more reliable. We have 30% offs, we have 1+1, we have 5, 10, 15s regularly, whereas the cubing events are way more fickle, they're all over the place. DMTs seem non existent, maybe not even functional. So it seems way safer to bet on huge gains when it comes to Star Forcing rather than when it comes to cubing. And because that's the case, that's why you'll have some people say just aim for like maybe get to legendary or get to like unique with 2 lines or get to legendary with 2 lines, but don't like min max everything. Save all that money up, invest it into level 150 equips, get it to high Star Force, then transfer over, and then redo your potential. That's why you would have that other person saying that. But what it depends on is how much are you going to play, how far are you aiming to get in this game, and like how realistic do you think it is for your current situation? That's what it ultimately comes down to. Both of these people have a good point, but they might be just playing for a different reason. One person might be like, I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to get hard Lucid in, and then I'm probably going to play WoW again, so then I'm going to dip. And then it makes most sense to have what you have, like get good potential, get 17 star, you can get that in, and then you're out. And the other person's like, well, I want to do Dark Knell, I want to do Gloom, I want to get to the Black Mage. And then when you're thinking in the long run, you just got to invest your money in a completely different way.
Okay, so then like I know that like the Star Force events can be like
Mm-hmm.
by that time. So like I guess my question is like because my weapon's already 14 star, do I just wait for a 5, 10, 15 to get that to 15 and then use the 17 star scroll on like a Galaxy or something like that?
Yeah, so the way we use the events, typically we use 30% off events to go up to 15. And then we use, because the 5, 10, 15 works at 5, at 10, and at 15. Not to those numbers, but at those numbers. So 5 to 6, 10 to 11, 15 to 16. Yeah. So 30% off on average saves you the most money to get to 15. And then you just wait there. And then once everything's at 15 and you see a 5, 10, 15 coming, that's when you push to 17, 16 for free, safeguard to 17, done. Real theoretically.
So like this Sunday, I should be looking to get all of my gear to 15.
Yes. The main thing there is, do you safeguard or not? So for some things, you should probably already have a bunch of backups. And then in general, you don't want to safeguard because the chance to boom is pretty low, but it is there. So if you have any safeguards, on average, way cheaper to not safeguard because the 30% off only applies to the base, to the base cost, not to the safeguard cost. Safeguard card cost is a double. So you're paying like 170% of the cost instead of 200% of the cost, basically. So it's only 15% off if you're safeguarding. And of course, disproportionately, most of your cost is going to be between 12 and 15 versus between 10 and 12. So, yeah, if you want to break down the total percentage, but it's not exactly 30% off. So that's why, yeah, you want to not safeguard if you don't absolutely have to. So for your shield, I hope that you have some backup recipes for that. For CRA, for example, you probably have some pieces, but not too many, right?
I have like a pretty decent amount actually.
Yeah. Then for those, I don't know how you are with the narrows for your tattoo and your monocle. Yeah, if you need backups for that.
Oh, Daenerys. No, like honestly, due to the daily sculpting, I don't want to get another
Mm-hmm. Okay, because I think for your situation, what you're aiming for, I think to go that route where you have, let's say, at least 2 star, but like, sorry, at least 2 line, but like 2.5 line potential, right? Where you have, 20, 24, the 24s, the 27s, like something like that, or maybe even hit the 30% on Abzo stuff, and you can get everything to 17. I think you can get a lot done in this game if you add up the value of your Legion and your Links. That's really going to make it so that all of the damage that you've accumulated on your character actually gets pushed through to the bosses. And then you'll be able to practice them more and get stronger. Then when you're at that point where everything gets to 17, and you have 2 or 2.5, maybe a few 3-line items, then you'll be at a perfect position to be like, okay, do you want to push beyond where you are now? Or are you just completely cool to staying where you are, right? There might be some power creep that even lets you move beyond without really having to change your gear much. But what's probably going to happen, and then that's what a lot of people are banking on with the next update, is that the drop for arcane items is going to be increased, hopefully from the harder bosses, and that the drop rate is going to be increased, which means if your Evan is going to train at the higher level areas, you'll still hopefully be able to get droplets there, which will help you get backup weapons. And then if you have your kind of farmer that comes online, if you want to start doing that, then you'll be able to make the other droplets while farming, and then that will help you get the other equips and get backups for that. Basically, whatever equips you can get drop and meso on should be fine, because all of your damage is going to come from your gear that you wear, both when you're mobbing and bossing, and from your boost nodes, your arcane power. Like that's where all of your damage comes from. And the damage loss, from the individual accessories should never overpower. If it does, then there's something else that you're missing that you could accommodate for that. One thing you can do is try to get at least 1 line of intellect on your accessories on top of your weapon, on top of your drop rate and your meso, because the way you look at it, it's 9 equips. If all of them just have 1 line of 9% intellect, then it's 81% intellect that you're getting extra. Yeah, then that's great. That's a good solid foundation then. So if you get to that point and you're like, I wanna maybe press beyond this, so one option would be to go into arcane. The other option would be into having a bunch of level 150 equips that you will save up, and then Star Force during a 5, 10, 15, get to high stars, maybe like to 21 or something, and then transfer hammer into your Abzo and then redo the potential on your Abzo. That would be the other option, depending on how realistic it is to get to arcane. If you put the numbers in a calculator, it just saves you money basically. If you do it on the Abzo, so here's like the downside, right? Like let's say for your weapon, there's a there's an upside. It's really strong weapons, really good. But there's a downside to having this. Like, let's say let's say Arcane really isn't that realistic anyway, and maybe it's not even that huge of an upgrade. Only if you have all the pieces, because you already have 3-line, etc., etc. So the second option makes the most sense. Well, you don't want to go for a lower level item like a Fafnir 21 star and transfer hammer it over, because then you have to read your potential and you lose that whole thing. So you have to do it on the Absolab itself, which means you risk blowing up Abzo, which means you need to keep doing your Dark World Tree, Scrapyard weeklies, and keep getting items so you have backups in case it blows up. So you can, you know about item traces and how that works?
Yes, I think like once it booms, it goes to the 12-star trace rate, and then the epic pod version of whatever lines you have, and then
No, so Trace keeps the exact potential. So it will keep the 33% magic attack. Yeah. So you can use that, and then you just get another, just whatever clean or whatever stats it has, Absolab. You can put the Trace on it, and it'll transform it into a 12-star with the same flame, with the same potential, with the same soul, and everything. And then you could just... No, no. Again, no, exactly. But you have to get another Absolab, which means you have to do the weeklies, you have to kill the bosses, right? And after a while, after a few booms, that can get really demoralizing. And the more items you do it on, it's just... Well, you know about the item weeklies, you can also trade them, right? So you can speed up the process by doing the weeklies on multiple characters and transferring them. and transferring them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's already good to have those backups. But with other items, let's say that let's take another Absolab. So for that one, that's like that would be the riskier thing, right? Because you need to get backups there. But for another item like I think your shoe is like 23%. That's something that's relatively easy to get back. So what you can do is you can get level 150 shoes. There's an easy shoe that is for sale in Root Abyss that just costs coins, so you don't even have to like stack them up in your inventory. You can just wait until there's a 5, 10, 15. You could prep, if you're thinking super long term, you could prep during a 30% off, already get 1 to 15, so that when 5, 10, 15 comes around, you can just start at 15, and if you get lucky, you don't have to get a bunch of backups. Maybe you get it on your first one. And then you just, whenever it blows up, you just buy another one, transfer the trace, start over. If it blows up, transfer trace. So because these are highly disposable items, right? Highly replaceable. And then once you get to 21, transfer it over. You have a 20-star Absolab shoe. You didn't have to risk a single Absolab shoe. All you have to do, then your transfer hammer, so then it goes down to epic. And then you just cube it back up to legendary. And that this potential is very easy to reroll. And if you look at the price of how much you gain from not having to blow up Abzo versus how much it costs on extra just to have to re-get up from epic to legendary with 2 lines, like that doesn't even compare. It's so much cheaper on average. So that's, yeah. So,
I guess then my next question is, should I outpot my superior gods ring? Because like I know Meister is gonna get transferred on it, so is it even worth it? Like
should,
I know I have one line hit on the superior gods ring, and it's
yeah.
like
Mm-hmm. Well, you're not even equipping it now, you said, right?
I equip it when I boss just because of like the extra ID, but like when I'm mob, I guess then I'm like neutral green basically.
Okay. Well, so the one thing I always preach is that you only want to upgrade when it's functional. You don't want to upgrade just because you can, because if you did that, then you'd actually never stop, right? Because you can always upgrade. So it is, of course, very important to wear this while bossing. And the main value right now is that it gives you the extra 30 boss and a 30 IED. I think until you're at the point where everything is like up to 17 and basically Star Force wise you kind of hit that wall, either then you have to like start deciding, do you just get everything to legendary and get it to 2 lines and maybe 2.5 lines, and is that what you're content with, or do you kind of keep it unique legendary wherever they are and focus hardcore on level 150 gear to transfer that, or do you completely move into arcane? All of those decisions, the reason that I would just like stop now and wait for those decisions is because those are like year plus decisions. It costs so much money. Yeah, it costs so much money. You have to play around events. you have to sit on money for a long time, it's going to take like a bunch of planning. So the more like kind of corners you cut because you don't exactly need it, the more freedom you'll also have to financially make those decisions. Yeah, realistically.
Actually, like, that was something I wanted to know. I had another question about individual stuff.
Yeah.
Which one should I max first? Like, people tell me like my boost notes, and then people say like holy symbol should always be number one. So then I'm just like,
I think holy symbol is definitely good to level. Typically, I don't max it all the way because maxing any skill, the higher you go, the more expensive it gets. And since it's an additive buff, that means that percentage-wise, it does lose a bit of its efficiency. Usually, what I do is I just look at I just Google decent holy symbol. I would just Google it usually, and then I'll just look at the numbers. So right now you're at level 18 in level 5, so you're at level 23. So you get 31% EXP and 21% drop rate, which means like the next level up would be very good, right? Because you get 1% on both. And then the level up after that, you get nothing. And the level up after that, you get 1% EXP. So yeah, so if you level up once, you get 1% each. If you level it up 3 times, you get 2% and 1%. So you could say like I'm just gonna get to 24 and just leave it there. The next bump is at yeah, like between 27 and 29, all you gain is 1% experience. The eventual is 35 and 24. So that's usually how I look at it. Like, what am I okay with rolling with for now? Like, let's say that I open like 50 more nodes. There's a good chance there's going to be like 1 or 2 holy symbols in there, and then eventually it'll max anyway. So it depends on how min-maxy you are. Someone is like, okay, I'm going to get this new character. I'm going to play it at the strongest. I have 3,000 nodes lying around. They fuck you max that immediately, right? Because it's a really solid foundation and you have the nodes. But definitely focus on your boost nodes. Yeah. After that, what I usually look at is, again, I just Google the skills and I look at like what is the uptime. And when it comes to buffs, especially, that's very important, right? Does the uptime change? Because skills that increase in uptime will give you a lot more to play around with. Like, I don't know if the spiral lasts longer or maybe gets a lower cooldown. Both are things that would result in higher uptime. That would be my priority.
skills already use overtime, so that's like maybe I should just max that first. Because also like as you level, you get more magic attack base. So
Yeah, and maybe it'll help you also play around with cycling with your other skills, which you probably would want to do that during bosses as well. So maybe that'll be some good practice for that. The other skill, the one that you have on the bottom left, that one doesn't really do much when you're mobbing, right? That's mainly only for bossing.
the spiral.
Um, it's like isn't it like a big burst, like constant damage?
Oh, the worm king thingy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I use that to burst in bosses, but also whenever it's up on mob, it just clears the screen. So I just
Oh, okay, it's a full screen. Okay. Yeah, I didn't quite know how big the hitbox was with that. Um,
it's not like
mhm.
a full screen thing, but it's like if you put it in the right place, like you can hit basically all of it.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, you do have a good position with Evan that you have 3 iframes, which is very useful. I would definitely say though to get rid of your decent advanced blessing. I don't think that.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna run that
Oh, yeah,
just
okay.
because
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
the attack speed thing.
Yeah, so speed infusion. Even if you get the attack speed thing, you still want to run both, I think, to hit max attack. Um, yeah, because if you would get to max with just speed infusion, then no one would take attack speed +1 in the inner. Instead, you would take like 20% boss, more magic attack, maybe buff duration, something like that. The other thing is that hopefully soon, when you level, maybe Sharp Eyes can come in, right? That can help you a lot. Um,
When I boss, I put in sharp eyes for fusion, or yeah, DHS. I usually run sharp eyes speed infusion.
yeah. Yeah, leveling is going to be very beneficial for you because it's going to open up things like mana overload, bind, and extra iframes. So that's going to give you a lot of utility and kind of like escape buttons on bossing. That's kind of the downside, right, of needing so many boost nodes. Because some other classes, if you're playing like a hero or a marksman or something, they just have 2 boost nodes, and at the same level as you are, they have access to so many more skill nodes. Yeah, but that also typically. Mm, yeah, so if you level up and then buy one, I think that would give you more stuff to play around with when you're going to be trying those bosses. That might be a good idea. Because yeah, like access to an extra iframe is very nice, especially in the beginning when you need it, right? And then maybe when you don't need it anymore, you can just replace it with an extra damaging skill. You get your otherworldly goddess in there, maybe, or mana overload. Yeah, ethereal form is one, and then the other one is your hyper skill, right? When you ride your dragon, and then the other one is Freud's if it's max stacked. So have you played around with Freud's? Ah, okay. Yeah, so Ethereform, if you level it, the cooldown goes down slightly, so it even gives you a little bit more uses. And Freud's basically you tap it and it gives you one charge, and then it goes on a pretty low cooldown, and then when it's available again, you can tap it again, and then it'll upgrade from level 1 to level 2. It'll get like an extra stack, and then once you hit the max stacks, you're invulnerable for 30 seconds. And then it goes on a longer cooldown. So what some people will do is before the boss fight, people used to do this for Lotus, for example, right? Because you didn't know where the laser would spawn. In the beginning, they would just stack Freud's until they had 30 seconds of invincibility, and then just go in and then just invincibility the whole phase 1, so that they have no problem with the lasers. Stuff like that. Yeah, but once you get used to your iframes and then you get used to the boss, you don't need the iframes anymore. You can take the more risky ones like mana overload, right? More final damage, a little bit higher cost for skills, but in turn more damage. So it's like a little bit more high risk, high reward kind of thing. Maybe your otherworldly blessing for more burst during your fusion of your 2/5 job skills, which that's a lot of damage, right? That fire. And you don't have an innate bind, right? So you probably want to squeeze that bind in there somewhere to confirm some of that damage and that spiral damage, because that's a lot. I wouldn't, with how much you still have like room to grow and how many expenses you can possibly make. The heart is super super low priority, so I would just completely just leave it where it is now. The one other thing though that I did want to mention is that in general, um, since I don't think you boss very much, right? Yeah, so your flame income is probably pretty limited, I'm guessing. Because yeah, because if you look at like the possible gains you could be making off flames is if you add all of those little bits up, it's actually quite big. I don't know if you saw my flame video on like flame scores and how good flames are and what realistic scores are. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, do you have any specific questions left about equips and upgrading? Okay. Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, so you can transfer something onto pretty much everything in the level 160 range. I think the only exception is the tattoo. Everything else you can transfer something into. So you can. So that could be something that you do. Since it's at 12, what you could do is so to save at this point, yeah, because you would still want to safeguard because you don't have backups. Well, you could technically buy a backup, right? If bad comes to worst. So here are your options, right? You just wait for wait for 30% off. You safeguard this one to 15, or you don't safeguard to 15 and you risk booming it. Boom chance very low. You can always use a calculator to check the exact numbers, but boom chance is very low. Well, we can actually check it right now. Exclamation mark star force. I put 2 exclamation marks. That's not how that works.
I've seen some of the averages for like the different levels and stuff in other videos, and I'm like, yeah, it's like
It's really really low, but if it happens, then you can affect if you don't have backups. 30% off. 0.27. So it does mean that if you do it on 4 items, that there's a good chance that at least one of them blows up, right? So there is a chance, right? Because if you're just doing it on one item, not super risky, but the more instances you pick up, the higher the chance becomes that it becomes one a reality. But if you have backups, you can see the difference. Like the median cost 276, 380 mil, and then if you safeguard, and then this goes back up to 22 for some reason. Then it's basically double the price. So if you're kind of strapped for cash, and you have the backup, that's the way I play. Basically, I don't make that much money, but I plan long term and I plan backups. So that way you can get value out of backups, even if you don't need to use them, because it allows you to bypass the safeguard costs. So that's like the thing you have to think about. And it could be a case-by-case basis for certain items. Like let's say that you have a bunch of backup capes. You're like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to risk it. But let's say for your weapons, like, okay, well, I'm not going to risk that. Always go up to 17, always full safeguard. And then, we'll see from there. It'll depend, yeah. So for the cape, the possible backups is the Ramaru capes, but those are all different, so the trace isn't necessarily transferable if it blows up. The one that is reliable is the Sakum cape, the Enraged Sakum cape from Chaos Sakum. That one's 150. Yeah. So that was the third option I was getting into, that you 30% off, get a Sakum cape to 15, sit on that, wait for a 5, 10, 15, then get the Sakum cape to 16, transfer it, and then get it to 16 again, and then safeguard to 17. That would be the other option.
I guess like what range, or like do you have like a thing that tells you how strong you need to be able to solo lucid?
Um, Normal lucid is a tough one because it's very like kit based. Either you have to have so much burst that you just kind of blow through her, or you have to have so much golem clear that you can actually reliably kill golems all by yourself, and then you can kind of stretch the length of the run. Or you have a bunch of iframes that let you just not die out in phase 1. It's pretty kit based, so it's really hard to tell like how strong you have to be. There's definitely a point when you get to like 50k stat and all of your stuff is upgraded, then you can, any class should be able to at that point pretty much solo it. But for some classes, I think some people do it at like 23k stat, but others might have to wait until they're like 45k or something. And since it's kind of burst reliant, it also depends on if you have one of those Oz rings. You could, if you have like a long iframes, Oz ring burst, you could just maybe blow through the whole thing. It's very, very skill dependent, or like kit dependent, I should say.
I think like that goes through all of my questions. This is super helpful, so thank you.
The one thing I guess, what is like kind of like, what are kind of like the dailies and the weeklies that you do now? So we can kind of go through that, see which ones maybe you're missing that would be useful to add, or maybe to leave out that maybe aren't that useful.
So right now I do all my arcane dailies plus Maple Tour, Monster Tour, and then I don't always do Commercy. It's like whenever I feel like it, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And then I always get a Gollix run in from like a guild carry, and then I do Red Maru and Arc, and then that's like pretty much it. And then I do like weekly bosses like Chaos versions and then Igni and Zack and so.
Okay. That's pretty good coverage, I guess. Yeah, the only thing I do is I add normal Magnus, normal Queen, and normal Vellum because those drop double S tier souls.
I cap with my guild.
Okay, yeah. No, then that's fine. Yeah. I don't think there's anything glaring that you're missing out on. I mean, I guess maybe like event wise, if you point cap and if you upgrade your scroll, all of that stuff. Other than that, yeah. So you're working on the Monster Parker Metal, and then you're when you equip with that. Yeah. So the 30 boss 30 IED that from the superior, that's not in your stat window, right?
No.
Yeah, because that 67 already goes up by quite a bit then. So you go up to like 76 if you equip the ring. Functionally, you have 79. Oh, it's a 30%. Yeah, 30% of 33. Wait, that should be 10%, no? Wait. Oh, wait, you had something else equipped as well. You said before. Oh, we did the hypers, but that didn't add ID. But yeah, it should be 10% from the metal. Yeah, from the metal. But yeah, Legion of Lynx is gonna come in real clutch. So look at that grid. Look at which ones are high priority. If you hate it, put it aside. And but it's gonna be a little bit of muscling through. But
The only thing that I guess I never got an answer from is like which one should I burn next?
yeah, so I would just say like go in. So for Terra Burn, yeah. I don't know exactly which ones you have right now. Ooh, sorry, flashing lights chat. Ooh, I scrolled down way too far. I don't know why they did that. They added stuff on the bottom. You have 10 characters right now. So as weird as it is, I think building. Do you have all the experience ones?
I have Evan and Mercedes, but not Aaron.
Okay, Aaron is strong enough by itself, so we'd never burn that one. Typical, like I have a video on like what to Terra burn. It typically comes down to what is the value for your account and how much do people just hate training it. Phantom typically has really good value for your account because of the crit rate skill, and like I said, right, that's where all of your damage comes from, basically, because that allows you to get your critical damage in. And Phantom historically, I think it's a bit better now because you can steal Pathfinder skills, the Cannoneer skills a little bit faster. But historically, Phantom has not been a crowd favorite at all.
Phantom and Jet are like the holding hands for lowest DPS.
Yes, although Jet's mobbing has gotten a lot better, and people actually like mobbing on there now. But it's mainly the bossing that they hate on there. Yeah. Mechanic is typically good value, but I think it comes into play a little bit later, maybe. Because buff duration is good, but buff duration very early on isn't that important. But later on, it becomes very important. So I don't know. Maybe I should move buff duration a little bit to the right column-wise. I'm not 100% sure. But that's typically also when people hate training. So that's usually scores very high. But if you don't have a Phantom yet, 200 plus Terra Burn to 210, you get those extra nodes. You can transfer the nodes over.
It's like I have my first main ever was a Luminous, and like I enjoyed it, so
Mm-hmm.
I think like I can train Luminous a little bit.
Yeah, and Lumi is also a good candidate to get the level 3 link on because it is pretty easy, simple mobbing. And once you get to 5th, just the access to the skills basically is just a free carry from 200 to 210, and then you can just decide then what you want to do with the character. But the yeah, I guess you'll see a few videos once you once you get to them. But yeah, if you have like follow up questions at that point, you can always hop into the chat and be like, "Hey, this and that. What's the deal exactly?" But yeah, just keep like flaming on the side. Definitely some gains to be made. Make sure you like prioritize which items can get the biggest gains from flames over others, and go from there. Yep, no problem. Best of luck. All right, I'll see you. That was a great conversation. Thank you for asking me, Discord. Wow. Amazing. Big session, big gains, lots of stuff going on. Combination of things. So you see when you progress really quickly through the game, specifically happens when you get carried. There might be a lot of things that are kind of like out of place, which isn't necessarily like the most horrible thing, but it does mean that you might be overcompensating. Maybe if you guys are workout bros or workout girls, this, like you might be overcompensating on with something, and then because something else is underdeveloped, right? That's basically what's going on here. So the whole thing was basically me trying to help our duder here to kind of like reset that balance and try to see where can you make the biggest gains, and to kind of like shift the balance, your intention towards that, so that you can make sure that you're not overcompensating with something else and maybe going a little bit too ham on like, oh, I'm getting a farming kana to make a lot of money so I can get stronger, when you can get more gains than that with way fewer investments, just in a different area, right? With that being said, like I said last time, I will check in the chat. Are there people in the chat right now who would like one of these sessions as well, but for free? Because we have sexy people in the community who have donated money to a Christmas charity fund where basically I get to give away these sessions for free to some of you guys because they've already been paid for. Free shit, yes, exactly. All right. All right, how am I going to do this? I will say just if you could need one, and if you want one, right? Only if you really need one, right? Holiday spirit, don't take one away from people who might need it more. That kind of stuff. Just type a one in the chat if you want to be considered, and then I'll just jot down the names, or just pick a random number, and then we'll just pick someone from that list. Right now, live. Free either equip or progression or full account progression giveaway, whichever you want. One, don't add me. Okay, cool. I'll just put the names down. These are two people. There are probably better ways of doing this, but imagine organizing stuff beforehand. Prime Gaming. No. Okay, that's the wrong button. Some cool shit. Where'd your name go? Oh, because selecting things is hard. Okay. Where else do we have? You like raffles? Yeah, but I'm just gonna do it to anyone in the chat right now. I'm not gonna make it so that Okay, real quick. Who else do we have? Jay. Sparks. Wait, did we already do one, Jay? Oh, I guess you can always use another one, huh? Another one. Choco biscuits. You like raffles? Cyanide 22. I'm doing one of these again tomorrow, the day afterwards, and the day after. So I'll give away at least one on Jagadator. Aren't you scheduled for Thursday? You gotta get another one. XX Proxo D. In the name of Proxo 1. Wait, OLL, didn't you request one? You still have to add info. Wait, if you win, you're gonna give it to Proxo? Okay, we're not gonna. Sakuretsu. And Black Po. Okay. How many names do you have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Perfect. 10 names. All right. I will do a random number generator. How do you do that again? Random number generator. Isn't that like in? Yeah. Min 1, max 10. Here we go. Okay, this is not the roll. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, 10 possible winners of a free progression session. 1 out of 10 odds. Yep. 22 to 23 free. No, that's 3%. That's 1 out of 33. That's a lot lower chance. All right. Okay, we'll do. No fake rolls. First one is the run. Okay, here we go. We're rolling this. 3, 2, 1. 3. 3's the winner. Chase Sparks. Bam. Winner. Do you want to use it, or do you want to give it away to someone else in the list? Robbed. Rigged. Robbed. I can give it? Wait, do you want to give it to someone specifically, or do you want me to re-roll it? You won, dude. It's your show. Gimme. You didn't even enter. Give it to Aller. All right. J Sparks has graciously moved it over and given it to Aller in the chat. Look at that holiday giving spirit. Very nice. All right, Aller. Make sure you check. Exclamation mark progression. That's not how you do any of that. Exclamation mark progression. Check that in the chat. Check the second link and follow the instructions, and I'll hear from you soon, okay? All right, I'm going to do the same. Not right now, but I'm going to do the same with the comments of the progression session I did before this. I'll go to that comment section as well. And I'll draw someone from the people who commented there that they would like a progression. And the same goes for this video. If you're somehow still watching this, if you would also like to win one of those free progression sessions, leave a comment in the video below, in the comment section, whatever the fuck you call it, that you would like a progression session. It can be either just for equips, or it can be for everything. And if you don't want to wait in line or wait until you win the lottery, you can also check the links in the description to see how you can request one of your own, and you can do the same thing that we just did today, or something completely different. You want to look at a boss fight and you want to help get some advice on how to do the boss better, or you want to talk about just what character should I main, what are the differences between the classes, what can I play. Remember, this is Reboot specific advice, but you just basically get a session either for 45 minutes or for an hour and a half, depending on which package you choose. And at that point, it's kind of your show. You just tell me what I can help you with. All right. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.